Welcome back, shall I say, on the vehicle. I've actually sat outside the vehicle. I decided that's a better space to be in for the next few minutes. It's been a bit of a challenging audio situation, although it does seem that as much as the problem has gotten much worse, also with James on the vehicle with us, it seems that the problem is at least more reachable now or findable. Unfortunately, we won't be able to continue the drive this afternoon. As soon as this vehicle moves at all, the sound goes. So we're going to head back to the workshop, take all of that out. James is going to do one of his favorite things. He's going to get to open up an expensive piece of electronic equipment, put some screwdrivers and things in there, play around with it, solder, try a few things and see how it works. So James is looking forward to that, and hopefully if it all works out, which I'm sure it will, we'll have perfect sound again in the morning and we'll have an awesome game drive ahead of us. So unfortunately, just apologies, we won't be able to go out anymore this afternoon. It's one of those things. We are out in the middle of nowhere. When I say that, I'm not joking. We are very far. The closest town with a couple of shops in it is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here, and the closest big town is about 3.5 hours away. So not that easy to always fix these things, and we do work in some rough environments, which is just the way we like it. So apologies for that, and we'll see you out here again tomorrow morning. But for the moment, there's been quite a few questions. Hayley's going to send a few questions through, and I'll see if I can maybe answer them or at least give an opinion or a few thoughts on what they are. So Hayley, let's ask away.
First question from Lana, asking if the new game drive vehicles are going to be weatherproof. Will we be able to drive in the rain?
Anna, that's a very good question, and I'm going to take that question as broad as I can, just because of what we're going through the last few days. The new vehicles, the planning on it is that they will be... how do you guys know there's new vehicles coming? It's an interesting question. I don't think we've mentioned it, but very well picked up, Lana. When the new vehicles do come along, the tank will be put in the Museum of Natural History for us to look and admire, and they will be probably weatherproof, at least to the extent of softer rain, drizzle like we've had the last week or so. That kind of thing shouldn't be a problem at all, and even big storms we should be able to weather and stay out in them. So the plan is that in the not so distant future, somewhere in the next few months, not in the next week or so, but in the next few months, is to be a lot more weatherproof and bulletproof and bump-proof and dust-proof and all of those things. So yeah, looking forward to those, and that should also make a nice difference. But for the moment, we love the tank as much as we sometimes hate it. We do love the tank. This is the first of its kind. This vehicle is doing something that no other vehicle has ever done before. It's enabling us to do things we've never done before as well. So Lana, yes, they will be a lot more weatherproof, dustproof, condition-proof than this vehicle. Next question, Hayley.
The second question comes from Emma from London, asking if there are such places as elephant graves, or are they just old wives' tales?
Emma, nice to have some question from you again. There's actually a long answer to that question, but the point of elephant graveyards, and that's been a popular myth, I guess, that's been existing for a long time, ever since the very early days of African exploring by the Western world and the very early days of ivory hunting. I think, first of all, it's like any myth, any popular myth. I think it's grown a lot. You know, someone comes back and he's got quite a few pieces of ivory. It's 1875, and he walks into the bar and he orders his first cold beer for 6 months, and he tells the story of how he found all this ivory. And that story would obviously grow exponentially as it gets retold. So I think the myth has grown tremendously over time. But the logic behind it is that, first of all, there isn't something like elephant graveyards. It's not a place that elephants all go and they decide this is where we pass away. But what would have happened before the days of ivory becoming something commercially valuable is that, let's say in very bad drought conditions, you've got a massive population of elephant. The last 10, 15 years, southern Africa in general has had a lot of rain and the elephant population has escalated. Suddenly you've got a lot of dry conditions, very little water. The last few waterholes are drying up. Imagine even the big rivers start drying up. And now you've got a lot of animals dying. Now that has happened before. Droughts it's something that's normal. And you'll have a lot of animals suffering from it. An elephant would be one of those animals. They are water dependent. They need lots of water. And then you would find that as the rivers shrink and the waterholes get smaller and smaller, you would have obviously massive concentrations of game around those areas. And again, that would go for every species, but especially for elephant. They'd be big enough to then protect that waterhole. If it really gets down to it, they would keep other animals away. They would chase away rhino, chase away herds of zebra if they can, to protect that resource. And then if that got even smaller and smaller to the point where there's maybe very little or no water left, you would find more and more elephants start dying. And also most likely a lot of the elephant that die would be older elephants that are getting weaker. Their teeth aren't so good anymore. they can't eat that well anymore, they can't get enough moisture from the food they eat, and they would all die in the area of that waterhole. So it's not impossible that, let's say 150 years ago, you had some Western hunter or explorer going and he finds maybe a little watering hole somewhere tucked away in the mountains, or a spring somewhere in a river that is known to elephant of that area, and that maybe 5 or 10 or 20 years before there was a massive drought and you had a whole lot of elephant passing away within that vicinity. So theoretically you would have struck the pot of gold or the heap of ivory, but it's not a graveyard. It's not that they decide to go there. But there's a lot of fascination with this. Like I say, you can actually give a very long answer to this question. There's obviously been case studies, both in research as well as by people just going out into the bush, where elephant are very fascinated by the bones of other elephant. Even with elephant that are busy dying within the herd, let's say the matriarch, or old female, is busy dying, getting very weak, it will actually literally happen where other individuals in the herd will try and help her up, keep her up, help her move around, even bring water to her and so on. So they do look after their own very well. And when elephant do pass away, I mean, there's a very touching case documented by Dr. Joyce Poole in East Africa, where an elephant died and the female stayed around this dead calf for quite a few days. She actually told us the story. She stayed with us in Pilansberg at one of the lodges I was at in the late 90s, and how this elephant just stood by this carcass until the rest of the herd eventually left her there, and she still stayed another day just standing by this little carcass. So there's a great emotional history, I guess, or stories around elephant that would suggest something like that. But elephant graveyards is not something that, at least to our knowledge and to the way we see things, exist. Well, nice question, Emma. Next one, Hayley.